to our second panel for today, where we have panelist Tanya Van Court, founder of Goalsetter, and Jeanne Pinder, founder of Clear Health Costs, who will be discussing their journey of bringing a concept to market. Our moderator is Geri Stengel, who's president of Ventureneer, which specializes in defining and eliminating problems that hold entrepreneurs back, especially women and people of color. Ventureneer produces research, training, and content for corporations, government agencies, and foundations. And Geri is best known for the articles she writes as a contributor to Forbes on the success factors of women entrepreneurs. And in 2015, she won the Madam C.J. Walker Business Leadership Award from the National Minority Business Council. Congratulations, Geri. And thank you, Geri. I'll turn it over to you to lead the discussion with our panelists.
Terrific. So I'm delighted to be here. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Tanya for a Forbes article, not sure, maybe it was a year or two ago, and have gotten to know Jeanne as well over a course of a couple of conversations. So since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to get straight to it. So Jeanne and Tanya, if you wouldn't mind giving a quick overview. We only have about 20 minutes for questions from me, and then we're going to take 10 minutes from the audience. So Jeanne, start us off. Give us a brief introduction of you and your company.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. I'm the founder and CEO of Clear Health Costs. We're a no longer startup in New York, bringing transparency to healthcare by telling people what stuff costs. We do this not only on our home site, but also in partnership with other news organizations. I started the company after I volunteered for a buyout from the New York Times after almost 25 years as a reporter, editor, and HR exec. I didn't really have any plans. A year later, I won a Shark Tank type pitch contest in New York City in front of a jury of venture capitalists and internet bigwigs. But I realized how hard it was going to be. I almost gave the money back. But a month later, I won another $20,000 grant. So I had $40,000 worth of no strings attached seed money to dismantle the healthcare industrial complex.
Wow, terrific, terrific. Tanya, can you tell us a little bit about your company?
Absolutely. Tanya Van Court, CEO and founder of Goalsetter. Goalsetter is a saving, smart spending, financial education, and soon to be investing app created for the entire family. And so we literally let kids open up their first savings account, have a debit card for teens and tweens. Our debit card comes with financial education quizzes attached to it that appear on a weekly basis. And if your kid hasn't taken their financial education quiz for the week by Sunday, their debit card will automatically freeze. But we are also soon offering investment accounts, and our investment accounts are also laden with education. We have educational quizzes and video content that are mapped to national financial literacy content put out by jumpstart.org, but rooted in memes and GIFs from pop culture, social media influencers, and all of the people who kids and parents actually want to hear from instead of hearing from a boring financial literacy kind of coach. I started Goalsetter because my daughter was 8, about to turn 9, and she said, "Mommy, for my 9th birthday, I really only want 2 things." And I said, "What's that?" She said, "Enough money to open an investment account and a bike." And I thought to myself, if I can get every kid to say that, I can change the world. And then I thought, why not me? And if not me, then who? I had come from a background at Nickelodeon, where I ran junior.com and noggin.com. I was then at Discovery Education, where I led marketing as they introduced digital textbooks into classrooms across the country. And so I had this great background in education meets entertainment meets gamification. And really thought that all 3 of those needed to be applied to financial literacy and financial education for every kid and every family in this country. And that's when I left my big corporate gigs and started Goalsetter.
Terrific, terrific. So thank you for also telling us about the inspiration. Tanya, can you also tell our audience how you researched the idea and knew that this was a good market opportunity?
Sure. For me, the first thing was understanding what both parents wanted and what kids wanted. The great thing about Nickelodeon and my time at Nickelodeon is that we often said, it is our job to make sure that parents turn the television to Nickelodeon, but once they get there, kids say, don't turn that channel. And so for me, it was really important to understand both sides of the coin. So I started talking to a bunch of parent friends and said, how are you doing money in your house now? What are your frustrations? What are your concerns? How are you trying to raise your kids to be financially smart? And what I realized was that there were big holes in the marketplace. That if anything, there were debit card companies that were launching teen and tween debit cards, but those debit cards didn't come with financial education. They didn't come with a focus on savings. They didn't come with the ability for the entire family to get in on the action. And so as I talked to parents and I asked them, what do you want? It was really interesting. 3 out of 4 parents said, we actually want a savings and investing platform that works for our whole family and has a teen and tween debit card attached to it. But the first thing I want is not just the teen and tween debit card. Only 14% of parents said they wanted a teen and tween debit card, and that was really their focus. And yet venture capital was pouring all of their money into the teen and tween debit card space. So Goalsetter did something different, and we did something different based on that research. And what we did different was we focused on the entire family. We let parents save and invest alongside their kids. And our financial literacy and financial education is also for the entire family, because guess what? In the past 100 years, America hasn't educated anyone on financial literacy. And so it's really important that we are all catching up in this moment and closing that knowledge gap.
I'm just going to dig a little bit deeper. How did you do the research? Was it personal interviews? Was it an online survey? Did you go to the library and do research? How did you do it?
I did a little bit of all of the above. So number one, I did personal interviews with parents. I had a bunch of parent friends. I made sure that I was reaching parents from all different backgrounds. And that was fine for me because I've got lots of friends from different backgrounds. Number two, I went and talked to kids and parents at my kids' karate dojo. I was spending hours and hours in the dojo anyway. So I just went to the dojo with a survey and said, hey, would you be willing to talk to me? I want to ask you some questions about, money. And that was a really easy way for me to get access to kids, because it's harder to get access to kids when you're researching. And then number three, I had a friend who runs a research company. And I said, I really need to do some research. Can you help me? And he said, sure, we have a do-it-yourself tool. So it's a really easy way for you to get immediate access to thousands of parents. And so I came up with a survey, came up with some screenshots, put it in front of them, got their feedback. And so those were the ways that we did that research: in person, through the karate dojo, and then online as well.
Terrific. Jeanne, if you can tell us sort of how you came up with the idea, and then also talk about how you researched it.
Right. So I really didn't have a plan after I left the Times. I was given the opportunity to join an entrepreneurship class at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism here in New York. I had to come up with an idea of a business. And I racked my brain trying to think of things that might be a good business opportunity. I did always have this experience as a fairly careful consumer of being confused by my healthcare bills and not being able to understand them and finding them really puzzling, like large numbers that didn't seem to make any sense. And the more I looked at it and the more I thought about it, the more I mentioned it to other people. I did that same kind of research, just talking to people like, what about your healthcare bills? And people would be like, oh my God, this horrible thing happened to me. Or you have to hear what happened to my sister, my mother, my cousin. Everybody has a story about appalling healthcare bills and nobody can understand them. So I figured, well, that seems like a pretty good business opportunity. I mean, I'm a smart person. I can understand healthcare bills. As it turns out, it's really not that easy, as we all know. So I did a lot of in-person research like that. We also did a lot of online stuff, things about engaging people in conversations about what they knew about healthcare, what they didn't know, what they wished they'd learned about healthcare. And just a series of really interviews. As a journalist, gathering information is a thing that I love to do. And I found it really fun. This was at a time, of course, when many startups are told that you have to be in stealth mode, right? That you have to keep secrets about what you're doing because somebody will come along and snitch your idea. Nothing can be further from the truth. I think a lot of startups fail because people are afraid to get out there with their ideas and afraid to get their ideas and their products into people's hands and let them test them out, see how they feel. Are they answering a need? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And are you actually solving it?
So Jeanne, thank you for touching on the stealth mode, because I teach entrepreneurs and I frequently have to tell them that they have to share their ideas. And if it's not, if they can't protect it enough in a shared environment, they're not, what do I want to say? It's not a protectable idea.
Well, and of course, it's not just an idea, it's the execution,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there are a billion great ideas out there, but if you can't execute on your ideas, then you're going to fail.
Terrific. So our audience has already anticipated my next question is, which is about Lean Startup. How did you go to market with the product? Did you do a minimum viable product to test it? How did you get feedback on the prototype? So Jeanne, if you can kick us off.
Yeah, we did have a minimum viable product. It was just a website, and getting it out there and getting reactions from people. Then we started to collect prices and put them into a searchable tool on the website. Come to find out that for that simple MRI, you could pay $300 or $6,000. A simple blood test could be $19 or $522. And when you put that into a searchable database and people can look at it and go, wait, I thought for years that I was being taken advantage of in the healthcare system. This is actual proof positive that I am. And oh, by the way, I'd rather have the $300 MRI than the $6,000 MRI. So brick by brick, step by step, putting together an MVP and then building on it by putting it out in the marketplace and asking people to use it, react to it, doing user testing with some of the really interesting tech tools that there are out there. And it was really, really interesting. The more we did it, the more we found that people were really offended, in fact, outraged by the healthcare system. And that emotional punch is one of the things that I think makes this business so valuable and so successful, because people are emotionally involved in this topic.
Absolutely. Tanya, you're in the financial services industry. Were you able to do a minimum viable product, or because you had to be perfect from the get-go, you couldn't?
We did a minimally viable product around just one dimension of what we were building. So we did a minimally viable product around gifting. And so we said, hey, if you could give a kid a gift that's not a piece of plastic, that's not a toy, and instead you could give them money that goes towards a goal, how many people would want to do that? And so gifting was just, one dimension of the product, but it was good enough to get us into an accelerator program. And when we got into that accelerator program, that was good enough to allow us to, really pivot or expand and say, this was just the first part of what we wanted to do. This was to demonstrate that consumerism amongst families is at an all-time high, and it's not where families want to be, right? Parents were getting mounds and mounds of gifts on a kid's birthday, and then literally taking them, putting them into a cardboard box, driving them over to the Goodwill and saying, here, take all of these. I don't have enough room in my house. My kid has, 1,000 toys already, et cetera, et cetera. So what we demonstrated was parents wanted and had a desperate desire for more ways to teach their kids about financial education, more ways to teach their kids the value of a dollar, more ways to de-emphasize consumerism in their households. And so our ability to demonstrate that with real feedback on that, one-dimensional MVP allowed us to go into other places. But the truth of the matter is it was really very difficult, Geri. I mean, it's difficult as a woman, as a person of color, as a person who's over 40, and I had all of those going for me. It is really difficult to get into a space where, the vast majority of venture capitalists feel like young white men or white men who have had a long career in financial services, that they are the only ones who belong in fintech. So yes, it was difficult. Yes, we needed some kind of MVP to get started, because people always looked to us for proof, even when they looked to other founders for what's your promise, right? We didn't get judged based on what's our promise. We got judged based on proof. And so that MVP was important.
So there's a couple more strikes against both of you, besides those that you already laid out, Tanya. You're both solo founders and you're non-technical. So Tanya, can you talk a little bit about how you overcame some resistance or hesitancy as you're raising money or trying to get clients when you're a non-technical solopreneur?
Yeah, listen, I have to be honest, as you said, number one, no one likes solopreneurs. So there was actually one accelerator program that I applied to, and I had a friend of mine come and pretend to be the co-founder, because I was like, there's no way I'm getting in if it's just me. And she actually happened to be a friend who had worked with me on the business. So she had a tiny bit of stock in the business, but that was enough for her to be a co-founder for the purposes of that. People don't like solopreneurs. And so I do think, and I see why. It was hard. It was grueling for me. I did everything and did it until 3 o'clock in the morning every night. That's, you know, that you are setting yourself up for damn near impossible odds, excuse my French. And so it really, I think, is to your advantage if you can go find a co-founder that can remove some of that burden from you. That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing that I'll say is, you know, I really do think that not being a technical founder and not having a technical co-founder also put me at a disadvantage in terms of fundraising, but it just put me at a disadvantage. I see why, you know, VCs say, hey, I really want you to have a technical co-founder. It's harder. Again, these are things they're trying to de-risk themselves. And these are things that do make it a little bit harder. Now, does it make it impossible? Absolutely not. It just makes it harder. So what I did is I went and I hired a really smart, extraordinary technical employee. I gave him shares of stock, even though he's in Argentina, and almost no American tech company gives shares of stock to overseas employees. He was fantastic. And he was my right-hand person and really essential and critical to me building this product and building the company. And so he became my technical right-hand person and, you know, really has enabled us to get to where we are today. But I will say, I tried before that to outsource to India. I tried to outsource to New York City. Neither one of them worked. And so it really was important for me to have technical talent on my team and technical talent that could hire more technical talent.
So Jeanne, I think you may have solved this problem in a similar way. If you can talk about how you're overcoming being a solo founder and a non-techie.
Yeah, I actually think it's a strength to be flying solo. I have seen so many companies that failed because the partners could not agree. I have a friend who lost her company because she was looking for that mythical unicorn CTO, who actually turned out to be somebody who wound up thinking he wasn't getting paid enough. So he locked up all of the code and killed the business in a fit of pique. I heard a lot when we were starting up that people were like, well, you have to have a co-founder, nobody will fund you. And I'm like, okay, don't fund me then. Or you have to have a CTO. Like, where is that 20-year-old with the hoodie and the penis? You know, some way of saying there has to be a guy around here who's doing the coding. And I'm like, no, there doesn't. I had a really, really great technical, I guess I would almost call her a co-founder in the early going. She's since moved on to other things. I made a bunch of mistakes. I tried to outsource to New York City, which was awful. Portland, Oregon, Hanoi, Vietnam, a lot of different places, and wound up with this really happy relationship with a terrific developer from the Ukraine. And we've been together now for 7 years. It's a solid relationship. He finishes my sentences, and it couldn't be better. But the overwhelming assumption that you can't make it without a co-founder and without a technical co-founder is completely wrong. It annoys me immensely.
Terrific. Emily, do we have questions at this point? Or
Yes,
shall I continue asking?
No, I have a couple of questions. Excuse me. The first one is for Tanya. And just the general question was if you had checked in on what the high school curricula was doing in terms of educating children about financial literacy and where your product fits in.
So yes, absolutely. We our product is mapped to national financial literacy standards, kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. But our product is also just fun, and it includes lots of culturally relevant content, but a lot of just kid-friendly content. So all of that is to say, yes, we know exactly what's happening in the financial education space in our K through 12 schools. We are actually partnering with some schools to get Goalsetter into the hands of those students, both in middle school and in high school, and to get associated content. As I said, in our product itself, we have these great financial education quizzes, but we also have some videos. And so we are starting to launch a full curriculum for middle school that will be ready in early next year, so that we can launch that to school systems and they can really have a 1-2 punch. They can have Goalsetter at home, they can have Goalsetter and financial education at school. And the beautiful thing about that is that kids who have savings accounts in their name are 6 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to own stocks by the time they're young adults. So it is not enough to just teach kids about financial education in a theoretical way. What we really need is that practical implementation of you're learning how to save, you're learning how to invest. No matter what socioeconomic group you come from, every kid out there has a birthday. And on every birthday, we should all specifically know grandmas and aunties and uncles call up and say, what can I get you for your birthday? So every kid has an opportunity to save money, even if it's small amounts, to fuel those long-term dreams. So yes, we are checking in and connecting and partnering with school systems across the country to do that.
Thank you. I have a question for Jeanne about whether, one, if you saw the New York Times article by Elizabeth Rosenthal about Chargemaster, and if so, if you had any comments on that.
Yeah, the Chargemaster, so there's a whole lot of lying going on in the healthcare marketplace. That Chargemaster is just one big lie. It's a collection of prices that are inflated wildly beyond reason and hope. So that really big number, like let's say your bill charges you $13,000 for that MRI, it's a fictional number. It's like the manufacturer's suggested retail price or the rack rate in a hotel. It's fictional. They don't expect to get paid that. And yet the function that it performs in the marketplace is that it scares you, causes you to buy more insurance stuff. Every time you open up a bill, you see that really big charge price, the Chargemaster. And then down in the bottom right, there's a much smaller number. And you're like, oh, my insurance company negotiated that down for me. I'm so glad my insurance company did that. When in point of actual fact, it's like this big kabuki drama where none of it is real. None of it is real. And it exists to deceive you and to extract money from you.
Okay, you scared me. Now I have a question for both Tanya and Jeanne from Bad Freiburg. And it's, how did you find your tech partner? And can you talk about any other lean tests you did as you were starting out and how you had to pivot? A lot packed into those questions, but hopefully you can answer. Whichever one wants to start first.
I'll jump in. So we were in an accelerator program and we had yet another failed outsourcing of our technology. It wasn't working well. I was blowing through money. There were bugs. I couldn't figure out how to get the next set of features to be developed with this team that we were working with. And so I walked into this accelerator program almost in tears. And I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I cannot do this without a technologist who was working with me and working on this team, and or a tech co-founder. And one of the guys who led the accelerator program said, Tanya, you know what, go talk to Nishant. Nishant is one of your fellow CEOs in this accelerator program. He's hired a fantastic lead engineer out of Argentina. Maybe he can help you. So I called Nishant. Nishant sets up time with me. He asked me, what am I doing right now? In terms of my technological spend. I tell him, he says, go fire those guys out of New York right now. They're not doing you any good. I mean, today, Tanya, right now, fire them. I'm going to hook you up with a recruiter who's a technical recruiter in Argentina. And that's the person who found my lead engineer. He's going to help you find a lead engineer. You're going to be in a completely different space in 30 days. So he introduced me to this technical recruiter who was Argentinian, but went to Stanford like me. And so we had a great, just rapport out of the gate. And he helped me to find my lead engineer. And so that's how I found a lead engineer. Any other lean tests that we did as we were starting out and how we had to pivot, that's what this accelerator program was about, by the way. It was about test something, see how it goes, test something, see how it goes, test something, see how it goes, until you, so we, you know, just have enough money to keep us going for a long period of time as we were, you know, testing and building and rebuilding and pivoting. Unfortunately, you know, other people, other founders get lots of money up front that they can blow and pivot with. Founders like me do not. And so, you know, there were a few smart pivots and smart tests, but not a million of them.
Right. So how we found our tech lead, the first one was something very similar. She was working for somebody that I knew and I had worked with before, and she came very highly recommended. When she was getting ready to move on, I was in a panic, but again, it turned out to be the kind of recommendation from a friend and business acquaintance who brought us to Alex from the Ukraine, who's been with us for 7 years now. And I think that's one of the things that you need to do is just keep asking, trying, asking, pivoting. As Tanya mentioned, we didn't have a lot of money to do this, but we were very resourceful. Journalists know how to get along on not very much money, and women actually also are very resourceful. So in general, making those pivots and trying different kinds of business models, seeking to know whether the design of the site was working out for people, whether the business model was fully functional. And that was a matter, again, of trial and error. And as it turns out, you know, it actually worked. I will not say that it was easy. I mean, there were times when I thought I was going to have to give up because we weren't making enough money, and it just didn't seem that the nation or society was quite ready for health cost transparency, but we stuck it out, which is one of the things that I think you'll hear from Tanya too, is just sticking with it and not giving up when the going gets tough. And I think that's a really important message for any startup founder and anything in life, actually. Persevere.
Great words of advice. I know we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to ask 30 seconds for each of you. What advice would you give to our attendees today, consisting of aspiring founders, new founders, people thinking of becoming founders? 30 seconds of advice. Tanya?
You're going to have to figure out your own path. You can read all of the books that they tell you to read, but all of the rules that work for other founders aren't necessarily going to work for you. So don't think they're going to work for you. And whenever you see a barrier, make sure that you treat that barrier as an obstacle and not a barrier, right? An obstacle means it's something that you can climb over, climb around, go under, and you've got to figure out a way to do that. Don't think about it as this means that I can never get from point A to point B. Perseverance wins the day every time.
Jeanne?
That's so very true. For any of us as founders and in life, you encounter a lot of naysaying, a lot of mansplaining. You're too old to start a company. I heard that a lot because I started when I was 55. You're a woman, you can't do a tech startup. You don't have a business model. It's too big a problem for you to solve. And to take all of that mansplaining and all of that naysaying and turn it into something good. It did take me a while to understand this sort of later in life. I figured out that I'm really motivated when people tell me I can't do something. Say, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay, just watch me. So that all boils down to few words of advice. Don't take no for an answer.
Thank you so much today. Great conversation. And you were a terrific ending for our programming today. We ended on a very high note. Now, before we sign off and go to Kumo Space for our networking, I would like to thank our sponsors, the AARP Foundation, BrandNet, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses, and the Global Center for Social Entrepreneurship Network, as well as our strategic partners. We couldn't have done it without all their support.